The content you are about to watch is not intended for children. Viewer discretion advised. Welcome back, Regretters. It's time for another episode of Regretful Reads. And I may sound a little somber right now, and that may be because we are finally finishing up the Sanders Edge Master Epic Saga of Squidbob. We are on the final and 15th part, but who knows if there'll be more in the future. I know there are some spin-offs, so I may need to read those as well. Anyway, let's not waste too much more time because this is kind of a long story. This story is entitled, Can a Sponge and an Octopus Live Happily Ever After? By Sanders Edge. Summary here says, can SpongeBob and Squidward survive the biggest test of their relationship yet? Or is their marriage over for good? Chapter 1. The Breakdown. It was now the midpoint of the semester for Claire and Squid Bastion at their new school of Pearlside. While initially worried about how well the kids would adjust, neither SpongeBob nor Squidward had any qualms about what they were seeing with their children. In fact, both partners were impressed beyond belief at just how well the kids had grown in just a few short months. As expected, Squid Bastion excelled with his musical talents. Within the first few weeks, he was fully integrated into the school's orchestra and had firmly locked down the second-chair clarinetist position. He'd also taken a real shine to jazz music as well, much to Squidward's delight, and it didn't take long before he was staying after school for jam sessions. In addition to music, Squibby was also becoming a budding graphic artist as well. While it was never a medium he'd really considered, after just one class, he instantly became hooked. When he was not playing the clarinet, he would be busy in the computer lab, trying to perfect his latest artistic creation. All this had another effect on Squibby, too. The once shy octopus, with a stutter, was breaking out of his shell and gaining confidence with each passing day. While his stutter was still there, it was nowhere near as noticeable as it was in the beginning of the school year. Like her brother, Claire was fitting into the new school rather swimmingly as well. She had made fast friends with the fellow sponges and had picked up the new curriculum with ease. Whether it was reading or math, there was seemingly nothing the girl couldn't do. Even though she was only in kindergarten, as the months flew by, she was rapidly outpacing her fellow classmates. Claire had also started to dabble in music as well, thanks to her new best friend, Muriel, or Miri, as she liked to be called. Straight from the St. George Channel between Ireland and Wales, Miri spoke with a soft Irish brogue and had an infectious smile. She also loved Celtic music and was already an accomplished dancer for her age. Miri's love for Celtic music soon passed to Claire, who was intrigued with upbeat sounds and fun melodies. While not coordinated enough to do a jig like Miri, Claire instead turned her attention to the many instruments of Irish folk music, particularly the tin whistle. Now, at the midpoint of the school year, Claire could confidently play basic songs and was well on her way to being a wonderful musician like her brother. This, too, made Squidward smile with delight. Not only was his son becoming a wonderful clarinetist, but his daughter had been bitten by the music bug, too. SpongeBob was less thrilled, though. While happy with how his two children were growing at Pearlside, he felt left out. The kids were pursuing Squidward's interests, and the three of them would talk every night about whatever musical piece they were currently working on. While SpongeBob was talented when it came to music to some degree, he just wasn't at the level as the rest of his family. Seeing this day after day started to have a negative effect on SpongeBob. He found himself often crying when he was alone about how his grand vision for his children were crumbling, especially when it came to Claire. SpongeBob had just assumed that due to Claire's enjoyment of cooking during every night that she'd gravitated towards culinary arts. However, she had little to no interest in taking parts in any of the cooking classes Pearlside offered. Deep down, of course, SpongeBob knew that his children were still very young and had years to pick up new activities. But despite his best efforts to keep his mind from running wild, he just couldn't keep the thoughts at bay. This negative energy was affecting other parts of SpongeBob's life as well, especially when it came to his husband. The sponge now resented Squidward for stealing his children and was becoming increasingly distant from his partner. Squidward had taken notice, but chalked it up at first to just SpongeBob's ever-changing emotional state. However, as days turned into weeks, he began to realize something was very wrong. Their once active sex life was completely non-existent. Now, and SpongeBob would act cold whenever it was just the two of them. The biggest change was their conversations, though. There would be days where SpongeBob would say less than 10 words to his husband, which was very un-SpongeBob-like. After weeks of this, Squidward had finally had enough and decided to confront SpongeBob about it.
"Sponge, we need to talk,"
Squidward said one night after the kids had gone to bed.
"Okay,"
SpongeBob replied in a monotone voice, having no interest in having whatever conversation his husband wanted to have.
What's going on?"
Squidward sighed.
"Whatever do you mean?"
SpongeBob flashed a stone-faced look at his partner.
"Nothing's going on. Just a normal day."
"Come on, Sponge,"
Squidward knew getting mad would only push his husband further away.
"We both know something's going on. We barely talk. You're always acting cold towards me, and we haven't so much as kissed in weeks, let alone mated."
"I haven't noticed,"
SpongeBob said nonchalantly.
"Guess I've been busy."
"You haven't noticed?"
Squidward bit his tongue to hold back his mounting rage.
"You really haven't noticed that we don't talk? I counted the other day. You said 7 words to me. 7! And busy? Busy doing what exactly? The kids are in school, and you haven't been to the Krusty Krab in 3 months. The house isn't even clean. The house isn't even that clean, and I still do chores like laundry and cleaning the bathroom. Vacuuming can't make you that busy."
"Nope, I haven't noticed."
SpongeBob rolled his eyes.
"Or maybe you haven't noticed because you're stealing the kids."
"What?"
Squidward was completely caught off guard by his husband's statement.
"What do you mean, stealing the kids, SpongeBob? They're our kids. I can't steal them."
"You would think that you kid stealer!"
SpongeBob spat back.
"You and the kids do everything together. It's like I don't even exist. They clearly love you more than me."
"Don't be ridiculous."
Squidward couldn't hold back his anger anymore.
"You really think I'm stealing the kids because they enjoy music? Don't you want me to spend time with them, share interests, help them grow and learn?"
"Yeah, right,"
SpongeBob huffed.
"You made them go to that school so they could focus on what you like, not what I like. I don't even get a say. All the kids care about is music and art. Why can't they like cooking? Are you telling them to hate cooking?"
"Get a hold of yourself."
Squidward felt a fire in his eyes.
"And how dare you accuse me of forcing the kids to do something? They like music. I'm going to support them and help them because the best musicians they can be. Also, maybe you've forgotten with the square brain of yours, but the kids chose the school. Would you rather them go back to Bikini Bottom Elementary where they could be killed?"
"Don't say that!"
SpongeBob gasped.
"How could you ever suggest our children would be killed? I can't be in the house with you right now."
With that, SpongeBob got off the couch before running out the front door, tears streaming down his face. He was on the verge of being hysterical and just started to run as fast as he could away from the pineapple. As he watched him leave, Squidward laid back on the couch and put his tentacles over his head while letting out a deep sigh. He couldn't believe what had just happened. More importantly, couldn't believe what SpongeBob had said. Chapter 2. Has anyone seen SpongeBob? As SpongeBob ran from the house, tears filled his eyes, and he sobbed hysterically as he moved as fast as his little legs could carry him. He didn't know where he was going to go. All he knew was that he needed to be away from the house right now, and most of all, away from Squidward.
"How could he say that?"
SpongeBob screamed out into the inky blackness as he continued to run.
Dad! The little ones! Dad, I can't! Whoa!
Before he could get out of the rest of his emotional thoughts, SpongeBob tripped over a rock and went tumbling down a sandbank and into a grassy field. With a groan, he attempted to stand up, but everything hurt, and he quickly fell back onto the grass, weeping harder than he had ever been just moments before. However, within minutes, blackness overtook his consciousness, and his eyes grew heavy. When SpongeBob awoke, the sun was starting to cast its rays through the water, turning it to brilliant blue. The flower clouds hung in the air, and if he hadn't been so panicked, SpongeBob would have surely enjoyed soaking in the sereneness of the sight.
What's going on?
SpongeBob quickly looked around, trying to figure out where he was. His heart was beating in his throat, and he felt like he was about to throw up. Had he been kidnapped? Been in an accident? Were the kids okay? Squidward? Was Squidward okay? Then it all came rushing back to the sponge in an instant. The feeling of loneliness and abandonment of his children, the anger and resentment he felt at Squidward, and of course, the fight that led him to run out of the house without so much as a plan. With a quivering lip, SpongeBob sat in the grass. He was very sore, but everything seemed to be working even if it hurt to move. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional pain he was feeling, though.
Squidward!
The sponge wailed.
How could I be so dumb? He's gonna leave me and take the kids with him. He's probably already gone.
Pulling his shell phone out of his pocket, SpongeBob figured maybe he could call Squidward and catch him before he left for good. It wasn't meant to be, though. As SpongeBob looked down at his phone, he saw that it had been smashed beyond repair. With a huff, SpongeBob picked himself up and began to look around. He didn't immediately recognize anything, but once he climbed up a small knoll, he could see Bikini Bottom in the distance.
Wow, I certainly ran a long way,
SpongeBob said to himself.
Guess I better start walking.
Meanwhile, back at the pineapple, Squidward's phone alarm was sounding off, and he picked himself up off the couch. Figuring he'd fallen asleep while waiting for SpongeBob to come home, Squidward stood up and made his way upstairs to see if his husband was in the bed. When Squidward opened the door to the room, though, all he saw was a pristinely made bed and no sign of his partner. He then made his way to his kids' room to see if maybe he'd decided to sleep there last night, but both were devoid of the yellow sponge. Finally, in a last-ditch attempt, Squidward checked the library before making his way onto the roof to see if he could find his husband. Yet again, both places were completely empty and eerily quiet.
Well, shit,
Squidward sighed to himself. Figuring there wasn't much he could do at this moment, Squidward went to get the kids up and ready for school. There was no sense in panicking them right now, and once they were at school, he could set out to look for his partner. Thankfully, when the kids asked where SpongeBob was, Squidward's explanation that he was just running early morning errands was met without question. He wasn't sure what he'd tell them if SpongeBob wasn't back by the time they got home, but he'd cross that bridge if he came to it. After the kids were ready and on the bus, Squidward made his way out to his boat. He started running down all the places that SpongeBob might be. It wasn't like he could drive, so he couldn't have gotten all that far. Well, unless he had jumped on the bus. Squidward shook his head to remove the thought. Squidward turned the key to the boat before pulling out of the garage. He figured he should at least go ask Patrick if he'd seen SpongeBob, so he switched the boat back off and made his way over to the pink starfish's home. With a few taps on the rock, it swung open, and a rather sleepy-looking Patrick gave Squidward a puzzled look.
"Oh, hi, Squidward," Patrick yawned. "Do you need something?"
have you seen SpongeBob?
Squidward cut right to the chase.
Or does he happen to be there? I haven't seen him since last night.
"No, he's not here."
Patrick turned to look around his home.
"At least I don't think he's here. SpongeBob, are you here?"
Squidward resisted the urge to roll his eyes at the dim-witted starfish.
"Nope, no answer."
Patrick turned his attention back to the octopus.
"I haven't seen him in a couple of days. Come to think of it."
Okay, thanks, Patrick.
Squidward sighed.
If you see him, can you tell him I'm looking for him? Have him call me?
Will do.
Patrick looked like he was about to fall back asleep.
Thanks.
Squidward muttered before turning his attention back to the garage. Then he had another idea. Maybe SpongeBob was in the Maui head. After Squidward had moved into the pineapple with SpongeBob and the kids, he'd remodeled the house to have an office, a better art studio, and a practice space for playing music undisturbed. Even though he knew he should sell it, it seemed like such a waste, especially since the house was paid off. Also, Squidward loathed the idea of having another neighbor. Turning the key to the front door, Squidward slipped into his old house. He hadn't been in here in a couple of weeks due to being so busy. It was stuffy and everything was covered in a fine layer of dust. With a huff, Squidward made a mental note that he needed to get over here more often. Pushing the cleanliness tasks aside, though, Squidward started to look through each of the rooms. But it quickly became apparent that SpongeBob wasn't in any of them.
Well, shit,
Squidward repeated to himself again.
Where could he be?
Concluding that he needed a moment to think, Squidward took a seat at his desk and let out a long breath. He spun around in the office chair, trying to come up with a plan, not only for SpongeBob, but for his life, too. Was this really the end of the road for him and SpongeBob? As Squidward pondered life, something caught his eye on the bookshelf behind the desk. It was a picture, and as Squidward reached out to grab it, he quickly felt tears starting to well up in his eyes. There in front of him was a picture of the two of them at their wedding.
We were so young,
Squidward sobbed.
and happy, and in love. What in the barnacles happened?
Squidward stared at the picture and let his tears flow freely down his cheeks. At the same thought played over and over again in his head. What had happened? Sure, the start of the relationship had been rocky with the unexpected pregnancy, but it seemed like whatever life threw at them, they could cope. From the plane crash and subsequent coma, to the miscarriage, to taking over the Krusty Krab, to adopting Squibby, it had all been a whirlwind. However, they'd always managed and come out the other side stronger.
This is stupid.
Squidward dried his eyes.
I'm stupid. I'm not leaving that little square brain, and he's not going to leave me. I'm going to find him. And fast.
Back at the pineapple, a scruffy, dirty, and tired SpongeBob made his way up to the walk. He was going as fast as he could in hopes that he could catch Squidward and apologize for everything before he left for good. However, when SpongeBob entered the house, it was eerily quiet. No yelling kids, no loud show blaring from the TV. And worst of all, no Squidward.
Tartar sauce!
SpongeBob stomped his foot.
I'm too late!
SpongeBob slumped down on the ground and began to cry again. Had Squidward really just up and left just like that? He must have, because the house was silent, and it looked like Squidward and the kids had left in a hurry this morning. Figuring there wasn't much he could do at the moment, SpongeBob pulled himself upstairs and into the bathroom, where he got the first real look at himself. With a screech, the sponge reeled back at the sight greeting him in the mirror. He looked a fright and definitely needed a shower and a fresh set of clothes before figuring out his next move. As the water poured over SpongeBob and he did his best to scrub himself clean, he began to process everything.
Of course,
SpongeBob slapped himself on the forehead.
It's quiet here because the kids are at school and Squidward must be at work. I need to get over to the Krusty Krab pronto.
Quickly jumping out of the shower, SpongeBob started to make a dash for the door before stopping dead in his tracks.
Can't very well go running around naked now.
SpongeBob blushed before turning back to the closet and grabbing a set of his signature clothes. With that sorted, he once again started his high-speed run to the Krusty Krab. Just as SpongeBob closed the front door, the door from the garage opened, and in marched Squidward, determined to figure out where his husband was. He made his way over to the counter to make a quick list of all the places he should check, but as he moved across the kitchen, a scent punched him in the nose.
What in the world?
Squidward said, taking a huge whiff of the water and smelled the soft mango and cedarwood tones of SpongeBob's soap. As quickly as he could, Squidward ran upstairs and into the bedroom where he saw a towel laying on the bed along with some tattered clothes on the floor. The scent of soap was strong, and steam was still slowly billowing out of the open bathroom door.
SpongeBob?
Squidward called out.
Are you here? Are you hurt? I saw your clothes.
There was no answer, only silence and the lovely smell of SpongeBob. Feeling dejected, Squidward made his way over to the bed and sat down. He didn't know whether to throw something in anger or break down and cry with frustration. Gary slithered in as Squidward mumbled to himself, holding the still damp towel in his tentacles.
Meow.
Gary asked the octopus.
Meow, 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 meow.
Wait, Gary.
Squidward looked at the snail.
SpongeBob was here, but he left again? How long ago?
Meow, meow, meow.
Gary replied.
Shit, I just missed him.
Squidward huffed.
Did he say where he was going?
Meow, meow, meow.
Gary used his eyes to point in the direction of the Krusty Krab.
Thanks, Gary.
Squidward smiled.
I need to hurry, but here, let me get you some treats first.
Squidward hurried downstairs and grabbed the box of snail treats off the shelf and placed a handful in Gary's bowl. Then, with a newfound purpose, he ran out to his boat to make his way to the Krusty Krab. With any luck, he'd catch SpongeBob in time. Chapter 3. Can the relationship survive?
Squidward!
SpongeBob screamed through heavy breathing as he tumbled through the door of the Krusty Krab. Everyone in the place froze, and the little yellow sponge rolled across the floor, coming to rest just in front of the boat-shaped counter. "Sponge-san!" Kiyoshi looked over the counter at SpongeBob. "Are you okay? Is there a problem?"
Hi, Kiyoshi.
SpongeBob stood up and dusted himself off.
Have you seen Squidward? I need to talk to him. Is he in his office?
"No, Sponge-san." Kiyoshi gave a worried look. "I haven't seen Squidward-san all day. Is he in some sort of trouble?"
I need to find Squidward.
SpongeBob started crying.
I made a fool of myself and I need to find him right away.
"I'm sure he will be in soon." Kiyoshi gave a soft smile and held out a fin to comfort the distraught sponge. "Ah, laddie!" The Scottish brog, William McCrabson, bellowed from the kitchen. "Go and sit just down and I'll fry up a patty. Squidward should be in soon enough."
Thanks, William.
SpongeBob sniffed.
I am kind of hungry. I haven't eaten since yesterday afternoon. Oh, my goodness gracious. Oh, my goodness gracious,
Squinifer Rockreef said, going over to SpongeBob.
Go have a seat, Mr. SpongeBob. I'll bring you the patty once it's done, along with a kelp soda.
SpongeBob made his way over to an empty table and took a seat. He knew that Squidward wouldn't be coming, but he was hungry, and he would need his energy if he was going to continue to look for Squidward. Plus, he needed a small mental break, and this was just the thing to do it.
Here you are, Mr. SpongeBob,
Squinifer said, putting down a plate with the deluxe Krabby Patty and a large kelp soda before taking a seat herself.
Can I join you? Sure, thanks, Squinty,
SpongeBob said before taking a big bite of the patty.
Thanks for the food. It's really hitting the spot. So, what happened?
Squinty leaned forward and lowered her voice.
I mean, if you want to tell me. If not, it's okay.
I goofed up! SpongeBob grimaced, thinking back to everything.
I thought Squidward was stealing the kids' attention from me, and I blew up at him before running off. Now I'm certain he's going to leave me, and I need to go find him to convince him to stay. If I may, Mr. SpongeBob,
Squinty began.
You and Mr. Squidward have been through a whole heck of a lot. I don't think one fight is going to break what you have. I'm sure it'll all sort itself out, and you'll be back to normal before you know it. I hope you're right,
SpongeBob forced a smile.
Enough about me, though. What about you? Oh, you know.
Squinty stole a fry from SpongeBob's plate.
Just the same old, same old. Oh, wait, you probably don't know. Mr. Krabs asked Cindy to marry him. And Cindy asked me to be in the wedding, too. I'm so excited. I've never been in a wedding before. I just wish they'd given me more time to get ready, though. What is it, like in a couple of months or something?
SpongeBob asked.
I wish.
Squinty let out a laugh.
You know Mr. Krabs, always trying to save a penny here or there. He got a really good deal on a venue, and it's this weekend. Oh, wow, that's just a few days away!
SpongeBob started to think about how magical his and Squidward's wedding had been.
Well, I'm glad they're finally making it official.
SpongeBob and Squinty continued to talk for a few more minutes about the wedding, what Squinty should do with her hair, and whether or not she had a date. However, they were interrupted by the chime of the door opening, and Squinty stood up to greet the customer.
Oh, hi, Mr. Squidward,
Squinty said, before turning slightly to SpongeBob, who was already leaping from his seat.
Squidward!
SpongeBob screamed as he flew across the restaurant and practically tackled his husband to the floor.
Squidward, I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me. I'm so...
Shh. Squidward put a finger to the sponge's quivering lips.
I forgive you, and I love you.
I love you too,
SpongeBob cried, tears flowing down his face and forming puddles on Squidward's shirt.
Now, if you don't mind,
Squidward let out a light-hearted chuckle.
Can we get off this gross floor? Can we go into the office and talk?
SpongeBob and Squidward spent the better part of 2 hours in the office talking things over. There were tears, there were hugs, and there were even a laugh or two about how they just missed one another at home. Whether their relationship had been dented, it hadn't been broken, and both of them knew that they were going to fix this one way or another. Throughout their discussion, SpongeBob and Squidward had worked out some of the bigger issues facing the two. Squidward conceded that he was pushing the kids a bit too much towards his interest, and agreed that maybe they should find some more family-related activities. SpongeBob, on the other hand, agreed that he'd overreacted and done a terrible job communicating how he'd been feeling. He also felt awful that he'd run off like he had, and promised not to do something so foolish again. In the midst of their talking, though, there was a knock at the door. After making sure both he and SpongeBob looked somewhat put together, Squidward got up and went to see who it was.
Hi there, Cindy,
Squidward said.
I thought you had the today off.
I do,
replied Cindy Fintooth, the original waitress SpongeBob and Squidward had hired right after they'd first become owners of the Krusty Krab.
There's something I need to talk to you about, though. I think I know what this is.
Squidward smiled and gestured towards a chair.
But have a seat, and let me know what's on your mind.
Well, as you know, Eugene and I are getting married this weekend.
Cindy blushed slightly, thinking about how wonderful it was going to be.
Wait, this weekend?
Squidward interrupted.
I knew you were engaged, but this weekend?
Oh, you know Eugene,
Cindy giggled.
He's always trying to stretch a dollar. He got a great deal to move up the wedding since there was a late cancellation. I don't mind either, since it just means I get to be married to him sooner. But about what I came to see you about.
Oh, goodness.
Squidward felt like a jerk.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you like that. Please continue.
It's quite all right,
Cindy smiled.
Anyway, as you know, Eugene and I are getting married, and as much as I love working here, Eugene and I have other plans. I hope you understand.
Understand?
Squidward said in a jovial tone.
Cindy, trust me, I more than understand completely. Before I became a part owner of the shindig, I loathed working here and wanted nothing more than to up and leave. I don't expect anyone's lifelong ambition to be a Krusty Krab employee.
Hey!
SpongeBob laughed.
Okay,
Squidward rolled his eyes.
I don't expect anyone other than my darling husband to have lifelong ambitions of being a Krusty Krab employee. Better?
Yes,
SpongeBob said cheerfully and went back to swinging his legs back and forth while sitting in a chair.
Don't get me wrong.
Cindy felt slightly guilty now.
I love working here. You and SpongeBob are wonderful bosses, and the staff is just so amazing. Squenty's even going to be in the wedding, too, and William's going to play the bagpipes for us. Kiyoshi even agreed to be our usher, whatever an usher does.
I know you like working here, Squidward replied. Don't feel guilty. I think it's wonderful you're moving on to bigger and better things. You're moving on to bigger and better things, right?
Of course.
Cindy clasped her fins together.
Eugene and I are working on a small business magazine together. The details are still fuzzy, but with my editorial know-how, it'll be great. I'm sure we'll feature the Krusty Krab in the first issue, too. That's great, Cindy.
Squidward genuinely meant it, too.
Well, don't be a stranger. You're always welcome here.
You two are coming to the wedding, right?
Cindy gave Squidward a puzzled look.
I mean, I was also kind of hoping Claire could be the flower girl and Squibby could be the ring bearer.
Maybe?
Squidward really didn't want to go there, but he knew SpongeBob and the kids would likely be excited about it.
Sponge, what do you say?
A wedding?
SpongeBob's eyes twinkled.
Of course I'll go to a wedding. Oh, it's going to be so magical.
Guess we're in then,
Squidward laughed.
We will talk to the kids tonight and text you, but I doubt it'll be an issue. I'll put up a sign letting everyone know we're closed this Saturday, too, since the entire staff will be at the wedding.
Cindy smiled and then stood up to give both Squidward and SpongeBob a hug. They hated to see her go since she had made the restaurant what it was, but they completely understood. They were also ecstatic to see Mr. Krabs getting such a wonderful wife, too, and they were sure the two of them would have a happy life together. Chapter 4. The Gourmet Sponge. Later that night, after the kids had come home from school, the family of 4 decided to make dinner together. It was something they used to enjoy quite a bit, and it was clear the family had missed their meal prep time together. As Squidward watched, he noticed just how happy SpongeBob seemed to be. He was in his element and doing everything from showing Claire the proper way to chop vegetables and explaining to Squibby how flavors should complement one another. While Squidward felt content at watching his family work away, one thing seemed rather strange to him. While SpongeBob was a good cook and could flip a mean Krabby Patty, it perplexed the octopus as to just when his husband became so gourmet. It wasn't like he disliked anything SpongeBob made, but it was always more of a simple affair, rather than an involved meal like they were making tonight. As Claire continued chopping vegetables for a kelp salad, and Squibby was manning the saucepans at the stove, Squidward nudged his partner.
Hey, Sponge.
Squidward kept his voice low so as not to interrupt the kids.
Don't take this the wrong way, but when did you become so, good at cooking?
What do you mean, Squibby?
SpongeBob let out a giggle.
You've watched me cook for years. You should know I'm good at it.
That's not what I mean.
Squidward searched for the words, not wanting to offend his husband.
I know you can cook, and I don't have any complaints about what you make, but you're acting like a regular Gordon Ralphie or an anchovy Bourdain.
Can I let you in on a little secret?
SpongeBob continued to giggle.
Sure.
Squidward arched his brow.
So, I've been taking cooking classes during the day while you're at work.
SpongeBob bit his lip as he tried to contain his excitement.
I wanted to get really good, then surprise you with all your favorite foods.
Wow, Sponge, that's great.
Squidward was taken aback a bit by the confession from his husband. He just assumed that SpongeBob sat around the house all day watching TV or playing games. But it was clear that he should probably give his husband a bit more credit.
I also had a bit of an idea that we could talk about later,
SpongeBob continued.
So,
Squidward cut off.
Oh, okay, I can't wait.
SpongeBob's face lit up even more than it already was.
I was hoping we could revive the 5-star Krusty Krab, and I could be the head chef. I know we need to talk to Mr. Krabs and everything, but wouldn't it be great? I have a rough business plan drawn up and everything.
Squidward was at a loss.
Sorry, Sponge. I had no idea you were working this hard to expand the restaurant. I feel even worse now that I accused you of doing nothing all day.
It's okay, Squiddy.
SpongeBob gave his husband a kiss on the nose.
So, what do you think?
Well, we can talk about the name because it's terrible.
Squidward smiled.
But I like the idea. Quite a bit, actually.
SpongeBob let out a squeal and went back to helping the kids prepare dinner. Squidward leaned over the counter and began to lose himself in thought. He really did feel terrible for telling SpongeBob that he did nothing all day, but he felt even worse that he didn't notice all of this sooner.
Dinner's ready!
Claire's shout broke Squidward's concentration. Once he had snapped back to reality, he followed the family into the dining room, where there was quite the spread of food laid out across the table. There was a fresh chopped kelp salad, braised coral tips in an oyster sauce, and stuffed barnacle balls. It all looked positively delicious, and Squidward couldn't wait to dive in.
Wow, you all did so great,
Squidward said as he took another big bite of the food.
You kids are wonderful cooks.
Well, we have a good teacher.
Claire beamed at SpongeBob, who returned that smile.
Isn't that right, Squibby? Absolutely,
Squidbastion added.
I never thought too much about cooking before, but it's really fun.
The family continued to eat, making short work of everything laid out on the table as if it were the last of the barnacle balls were snatched up. The family's attention turned to other business.
So, kiddos, we have a question for you.
Squidward held back a belch.
Mr. Krabs and Mrs. Cindy are getting married this weekend, and they want to know if you two want to help. Claire, they need a flower girl, and Squibby, they need a ring bearer. We wanted to ask you before telling them yes or no, though.
Ooh!
Claire's eyes grew huge and sparkled in the dining room light.
Tell Mrs. Cindy yes! Ring bearer?
Squibby looked confused at Squidward.
What's that?
Well, you have a very important job,
Squidward replied.
See, someone needs to hold onto the rings during the ceremony, and when they ask for them, you bring them up to the bride and groom.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Squibby wasn't nearly as excited as his sister, but still seemed intrigued nevertheless.
Okay, I'll do it. Great!
SpongeBob chimed in.
I'll text Cindy to let her know, and tomorrow we'll pick your clothes up after school, so good? What are we going to be wearing?
Claire asked, clearly looking forward to getting dressed up.
I actually don't know.
SpongeBob rubbed his cheek.
I'm sure Cindy has it picked out, though. Typically, you'll wear a dress, and Squibby, you'll need to wear a suit.
The family talked a little more about the wedding plans and how much fun they were going to have at it. Even Squidward was starting to come around after seeing the joy on his kids' faces regarding the event. He still wasn't completely sold on spending his Saturday night at a wedding, but he figured he could suck it up. After their conversation died down, the family cleaned up the table and scrubbed all the pots and pans clean that they'd used. Once everything was dry and put away, the kids made their way up to their rooms to finish up some schoolwork they had lingering from earlier in the day. Squidward and SpongeBob retired to the living room and sat together on the couch, the events of earlier in the day still hanging in the air.
Squiddy?
SpongeBob's voice was meek.
Can we talk about what happened?
I said it was okay, Sponge,
Squidward replied.
But yes, we can talk about it. What's on your mind?
I'm sorry again that I overreacted.
SpongeBob's already felt his lips quivering.
It was such a goof, and I can't believe I accused you of that. I feel stupid, and you must have been worried sick about me last night.
I was worried about you.
Squidward placed a tentacle on Sponge's hand.
I wanted to go looking for you, but I didn't want to wake the kids up and worry them. After I got them off to school this morning, I started searching for you.
I should have never ran off like that,
SpongeBob sniffled.
And when I got back to the house this morning, I thought you left for good. I don't want to lose you, Squiddy.
You're not going to lose me.
Squidward pulled SpongeBob in closer to him.
Shit happens, and we get through it. I'm sorry that I accused you of doing nothing all day. I had no idea you were taking cooking classes.
I should have told you.
SpongeBob snuggled up closer to his husband.
But I wanted it to be a surprise. I see how hard you work, and I wanted to do something to better our lives, which is why I thought about the fancy restaurant.
About that,
Squidward was happy for the opportunity to change the subject.
I hate the name, like positively loathe it, but love the idea. We can bring it up to Eugene after he and Cindy get back from their honeymoon and get settled.
The two talked some more about SpongeBob's idea for the fancy restaurant. Much to Squidward's delight, SpongeBob didn't just want to serve guessied-up Krabby Patties, although those were on the menu in various forms. Instead, he wanted to serve actual gourmet-style food that was fast, inexpensive, and above all, just as tasty as the Krabby Patty. After a couple hours of chatting, the two were ready for bed. As they climbed the stairs, they popped into each of the kids' rooms to tell them it was time to get ready for bed. Thankfully, they never put up a fight about it, and tonight was no exception. Once they were in their PJs, SpongeBob and Squidward tucked them in with a kiss on the forehead. Once in their room, SpongeBob and Squidward stripped off their clothes and flopped onto the bed. They were both exhausted from everything they had gone on, and the softness of the mattress felt heavenly. However, before they hit the hay for the night, the two started kissing, and as Squidward rolled over to switch off the light, the two were well on their way to the second part of making up. Chapter 5. A Fresh Start. The days leading up to the wedding flew by. There was so much to do, but thankfully SpongeBob was on top of it as he got their kids their new clothes, picked out new suits for him and Squidward, and even helped Cindy make all the final preparations. By the time Saturday rolled around, it was almost like the wedding had been planned for months, even though it had been thrown together in a matter of days.
Are you ready for this, Eugene?
Squidward leaned over to fix his friend's tie.
I'm sure Cindy will look beautiful.
Of course, Mr. Squidward.
Mr. Krabs let out a hearty laugh.
Thanks for that husband of yours. Things really came together, didn't they? Don't know how Cindy and I would have done it without that boyo.
Yeah, he's weirdly good at putting stuff together like this,
Squidward chuckled.
Thanks for stepping in, me best man.
Mr. Krabs placed a claw on Squidward's shoulder.
I know you and I haven't seen eye to eye, but I do consider ye me friend.
Don't mention it, Eugene.
Squidward smiled at the crustacean.
I consider you a friend as well. You've been great to my family over the years, and I'm happy to see that you finally found a good woman to marry.
Aye, me too, lad,
Mr. Krabs replied, just as music could be heard through the walls.
Guess it's time.
Just then, there was a small knock at the door, and SpongeBob popped his head inside, looking very much the part of a wedding planner with a headset and a clipboard.
They're ready for you, Mr. Krabs,
SpongeBob said, looking down at his notes.
The ceremony will start in 3 minutes. Squibby has the rings all ready, and Claire is loaded up with sea lilies. William is ready to start with the procession music, and on my cue, Kiyoshi has all the guests seated.
Thank you, boyo.
Mr. Krabs gave SpongeBob a hug.
You've really put the whole wedding together. Who knew you were such a planner? Now lead the way. I got a pretty girl to marry.
Squidward and Mr. Krabs left the room to line up in the aisle, and when they saw the hall for the first time, they both stood in awe. SpongeBob had really outdone himself with the decorations. There were red and white sea lilies strewn about, and a red carpet lined the aisle, way up to the main stage area. The lighting was soft, and the glow from hundreds of candles filled the room, making it all seem magical. Without a word, SpongeBob pointed to William, and the sounds of Myri's wedding filled the room. Squidward looked to the side of him and gave Squenny, who was the maid of honor, a smile, and took her tentacle in his to escort her down the aisle to stand near the altar. Once in position, SpongeBob tapped Pearl, who took her dad's claw and led him to the front of the room, giving him a hug before taking a seat in the front row. SpongeBob then made a motion to William and then held up 4 fingers. The bagpipe music stopped, and a silence fell over the room as SpongeBob counted down. Until making a fist, William started back up playing the traditional wedding march as Cindy made her way into the room, holding on to her mom's arm. Before Cindy started her procession, though, SpongeBob tapped his daughter's shoulder, who started to make her way down the aisle, sprinkling the flowers as she skipped along. Once Claire had finished, SpongeBob then gave the cue for Cindy to make her way to the altar. With a collective gasp, all eyes were on the bride, who was dressed in a rather expensive-looking white gown with pearl and coral accents. Even Eugene Krabs was speechless as his new wife was coming down the aisle, and all he could do was stand there and stare with his mouth agape. As Cindy reached the front of the room, Eugene held out his arms and took Cindy's fins into his claws, where they then shared a brief moment together. They were both speechless, with huge smiles plastered across their faces before turning to the officiant and telling him they were ready. The ceremony was a simple affair, lasting only a few minutes, but like everything else, it was perfect and well done, thanks to SpongeBob's planning. As the new couple shared a kiss and made their way down the aisle, now happily married, Kiyoshi took over to usher the guests to the reception. Once the room was empty, Squidward made his way back inside to get his husband, who he figured was still busy doing Neptune knows what. However, when Squidward came back into the room, he was met with something that stopped him dead in his tracks.
What's this?
Squidward asked as he looked around, seeing SpongeBob, Claire, and Squibby standing together at the front of the room with the fish who'd performed the wedding ceremony just before.
Squiddy!
SpongeBob smiled as he made his way towards his partner, reaching out and grabbing his tentacles.
Look, things have been a bit rocky, and I think we need a fresh start. So I sort of planned a renewal of vow ceremony. I figured since we had the efficient and everything, we could do it. And before you ask, yes, I talked to Mr. Krabs and Cindy too, and they agreed to this. So what do you say, Squidward? Want to be my husband again?
Of course.
Squidward fought back the tears, overwhelmed by the moment.
Squibby, do you have the new rings?
SpongeBob turned to his son, who handed him a small wooden box containing 2 new wedding bands for the couple.
Wait, you got us new rings?
Squidward asked.
I sure did.
SpongeBob puffed up his chest in a moment of pride.
I love the rings we had, but I wanted these to be extra special. Here, take a look.
Squidward took the box and lifted the lid. There, staring back at him, was a pair of gold rings, one significantly larger than the other, which he deducted was his. On the larger ring, set in the center, was a yellow topaz cut in the shape of a heart. On the smaller of the two, an aquamarine heart.
Yours is a Yellowstone because I'm yellow, and you have my heart.
SpongeBob let out a giggle.
And the blue stone is mine. I think it's called aquamarine. Was in the closest I could find to your color on such short notice. But what do you think?
SpongeBob, they're wonderful.
Squidward felt a happy tear roll down his cheek.
I feel a bit silly. I'm not very prepared for this whole thing, though.
Don't worry, I took care of everything.
SpongeBob smiled again before turning to the officiant.
All right, I think we're ready.
SpongeBob and Squidward,
the officiant cleared his throat.
We are gathered here not to join this couple in marriage, but rather to renew their commitment to love and to each other. SpongeBob, I believe you've written something for your husband?
Yes, I have.
SpongeBob's face was beating red, and he fumbled with a crinkled piece of paper he found in his suit jacket.
Squidward, you've been by my side through thick and thin, the good and the bad, and with me during happy and sad times. For that, I love you more than anything in the world, and couldn't picture my life without you.
Now, Squidward, I know this caught you off guard, the officiant replied, but is there anything you'd like to say?
SpongeBob.
Squidward hesitated, trying to think of the right words to say.
You have no idea how much you've turned my life around. Despite all the ups and downs, I'm a better cephalopod because of you. I love our little family and what our life has become. I love our adventures, all of our challenges, and everything in between. But most of all, I love you.
Beautiful.
SpongeBob looked at his partner with tears flowing from his eyes.
Well said, the officiant continued. Now, by the power invested in me, and under the watchful eyes of Neptune, I reconfirm both of you as partners for life.
Yay!
Claire screamed out, which was soon followed by more cheers coming from behind the family. As soon as SpongeBob and Squidward turned around, they saw everyone from the wedding standing in the back of the room celebrating the renewed couple.
All right, lads,
Mr. Krabs bellowed out.
Now that the lovey-dovey portion of the evening is over, let's get to partying. Who's with me? There's some rum with me name on it.
More cheers erupted from the crowd as everyone filed back into the reception area. However, Squidward and SpongeBob stayed behind, still holding on to each other.
I love you.
SpongeBob looked into his partner's eyes.
And I love you.
Squidward returned the gaze for a few moments before continuing.
How about we go and celebrate now, though?
Sounds good to me.
SpongeBob replied before a mischievous smile crept across his face.
But I think the real celebration will be later on tonight.
With a giggle, the couple left the room arm in arm and made their way into the reception hall, happier than either of them had ever been in a long, long time. The end! Oh boy, got me in tears at the end of that one. Jeez, Sanders Edge. Got a couple of notes here at the end of the story. And so ends the life and times of Squidbob's story, at least for now. Thank you so much for reading, and I appreciate all the comments I've gotten since I started this over a year ago. Also, a big shout out to Regretful Reads, that's me, who made this story famous in its own way. If it hadn't been for that boost in popularity, even if people were only hooked for the absurdness of the story, I probably wouldn't have made it this far in the saga. Well, that just touches me even deeper. Everyone go follow Sanders Edge. I'm going to start crying in the studio. If you'd like to support Sanders Edge, Twitter, archive of our own, you can become a YouTube member here. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.